Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast. We cover everything Major League, from spring training to the World Series. We've got your favorite club covered, from New York to Boston to LA. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. We got a great show lined up for you here today. The first couple of segments, we'll get into recapping the World Series. What's going on in the first couple of games? The Dodgers were able to win Game 1, get off to a hot start. Tampa Bay was able to bounce back late Wednesday evening and tie up the series at 1 game apiece. And now we have a best of 5 coming down the stretch here to see who will be crowned champion. After we recap the first couple of games, then we'll get into my preview for the rest of the series. Ultimately, what I think is going to happen games 3 through 7. I was correct on my game 1 and 2 picks. I had the incorrect pitchers going in each game. I talked to you guys about how I thought it would be Buehler and then Kershaw. Well, the Dodgers didn't do that. I did have Glasnow and Snell, but ultimately I thought we'd be at a split after a couple of games, and that's where we find ourselves. So Game 3 Friday night, I think, is going to be the one that may determine the series. But to hear more about that, you're going to have to stick around till our third segment. And then wrapping things up here today, we're going to discuss the Gold Glove nominees that have recently been released by Major League Baseball. The top 3 finalists for each position have been announced, and I'll let you guys know those names and talk about ultimately who I think may win the award. Honestly, a lot of them are going to be guesses. I haven't been able to pull up the statistics. It's going to be kind of name and awareness going on there, but what the heck, let's take a couple shots. Let's make some picks, see how many we can get right for you guys. But let's jump right into wrapping up Game 1 of the World Series. You guys have seen it by now, of course. LA took that game 8-3. Clayton Kershaw was your story, but before we dive into that and get into Clayton Kershaw here in just a little bit, I did want to talk about something I haven't brought up in a couple of weeks here on the Baseball Podcast, and that is the television ratings for Major League Baseball. And if you're not aware, sports across the board since the return from the pandemic have been down in ratings compared to last year. Now, there's a couple of different avenues you could go through in regards to trying to determine why that number has decreased or why it is down. First off, of course, the pandemic. A lot of people are without work or are financially stressed, which means they could be cutting the cord from their cable companies. So a lot of people don't have cable. They're not ability to watch it because they're watching their dollars and cents. You also have a lot of shutdowns still taking place. So bars, restaurants, whatever you can think of, golf courses, clubhouses, I don't know, wherever there's alcoholic beverages, televisions, typically they would have sports on in the playoffs, and a lot of those are shut down. So those numbers won't be able to generate to the ratings queue, so to speak. Another conversation that's having is everybody politicizing sports. Of course, in the NBA, we have the names on the back of the jerseys. We've seen that across football with a couple of different teams at the college level, putting social equality, education reform, things like that on their jerseys. We had games be canceled due to social unrest and social injustice, and there's communication around people go to sports in order to escape from politics and everything that's going on in the world right now, and they're not trying to interweave those two. So there's a lot of different things that may be happening here. It could be sports. You're overwhelmed, right? You had basketball, you have baseball, you have football, you had hockey there for a bit. Golf has been on, horse racing, everything is back all at once. So maybe you have a bit of sports fatigue and you're not that interested. But overall, baseball is down a bit, and there was bad news following Game 1 of the World Series. And I was very curious to see where Game 1 finished, because the small blip of hope, or the small positive that came out of Major League Baseball in the playoff rating so far was that Game 7, Dodgers-Braves, was one of the highest viewed games in recent memory, and actually an increase over last year's NLCS. Now, of course, this was a Game 7, two big fan bases, two passionate fan bases in Major League Baseball, so not a total surprise to see that number high. I was just curious if the casual fan was tuning in or if it was these fan bases driving that number. Well, Game 1 of the World Series, Clayton Kershaw on the mound, Cody Bellinger, Mookie Betts, names upon names from the Dodgers side of things. And this one came back as the least watched World Series game ever. I mean, not only the opener, but any game during the entire series ever. Now, it didn't hurt quite as bad from the demographic from 18 to 49, but across the board, not very good. Of course, there was record low attendance. Everybody knows the reason there. But the ratings were as low as they've ever been. And the next lowest game also involved the Tampa Bay Rays. It was actually Game 3 of the 2008 World Series against the Phillies. That started at about 10:15 p.m. Eastern time due to a rain delay. Didn't finish up till well after 1 o'clock in the morning, so you can understand why people didn't tune into that on a work and a school night if you weren't a fan. But also the Tampa Bay Rays, they have attendance issues. They don't draw a big crowd. They're not going to have a casual fan tune in, and even the diehards aren't there in the numbers, such as New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, or, any big city you're thinking of, L.A., so they can't drive but half the number there. So it'll be interesting to see how the series plays out, if it does go deep, if it goes 6-7 games, if those numbers tick up once again because the casual fan is interested, or if the Dodgers figure it out or Tampa gets hot and one of these teams is able to finish it in 5, if they'll continue to stay low and maybe even decrease and in a bad way beat the record of Game 1 of being the least watched game in World Series history. But I wanted to bring that up. Again, all sports are down. It's a conversation out there that's starting to be had. Kind of why is this going on? I think it's a combination of all of the above. I myself, a recent cord cutter, can't go to the bars to watch the game. Not in love with the politicalization of sports. I certainly understand you're an athlete, you have a platform, you're willing to speak your mind. I have no problem with that. If I was an athlete doing the same thing, that's fine. But that also means as a fan on this side of things, I don't have to love that. I mean, it's not the message being heard. It is just the fact that I dealt with this all day during my 9 to 5, having conversations, friends, family, and I just want to watch a ball game and not be constantly reminded of what's going on. So I get both sides of things, but truly I think it's more of the nobody's allowed to go out. Everybody's financially struggling out there with everything going on. So a lot of people getting rid of cable moving forward. But let's jump into Game 1 here now. Not going to run through, all the detail as to what went down a couple of days ago. You guys know out there by now since you're baseball fans. But 8-3 Los Angeles. It was a 0-0 game until the bottom of the 4th inning when the Dodgers were able to score a couple of runs to go up 2-0. Let's see here. I want to make sure I pull it up in front of you. My internet's been fighting me, so I'm working with my phone. But Bellinger was able to hit a home run to right center. He got a pitch he could hit from Glasnow up in the zone. Was able to get good one on it, get a nice lead out to a 2-0 start. Kiermaier, he responded right back. 2-1 now. L.A. in favor, top of the 5th. But then in the bottom of the 5th, that's when L.A. was really able to string it out. They scored 4 runs. Muncy had an RBI ground out. Smith singled, Taylor singled, and Hernandez singled. So they did it by, utilizing base-to-base strategy and not quite the long ball that their offense has been providing. They added that a little bit later when Mookie Betts homered to right field to make it 7-1. Max Muncy doubled to deep center and made it 8-1. And ultimately, the final score being 8-3 as the Rays were able to get a couple of runs late. But offensively, the Dodgers, Mookie Betts 2 for 4, like we said. Let's see, Max Muncy 2 for 4, Taylor 2 for 3, and then a lot of other gentlemen getting in the hit parade. Corey Seager and Jock Peterson were the 2 starters not to get into the hit column. But Clayton Kershaw, He's the story of Game 1. Everybody waiting for Clayton Kershaw to fall behind, give up the big run, try to extend him late into games. We're all talking about what happened against the Braves in Game 5 of the NLCS. Well, he came out, and honestly, he was very good. And I had a conversation with a couple of buddies saying that the Dodgers need to do him a favor and take him out before the big inning can happen. I mean, even if you think he's cruising, chugging along, he's feeling just fine, do him a favor and just get him out of there before the bad stuff can happen. And that's really what they did. Once they got the lead 6-1, 7-1, they said, okay, we're going to go to the bullpen. We're going to get you out of here feeling good about yourself. And it's truly made a difference. And I mean, looking at his last couple of trips out here in regards to the playoffs, pulling up his entire playoff stats in front of me, I want to look at the World Series compared to, the rest of his playoff career. And honestly, this is what's fascinating, is he is pretty steady being a worse pitcher than he is in the regular season. I don't know how to put that much better, but let's see, 3 World Series appearances. He is 2-2 with a 4.68 ERA in 32 innings. In 7 NLCS appearances, 3-6 with a 4.84 ERA. And then his total playoffs, 10 years, 20 total series, he is 12-12 with a 4.22 ERA. So for him to go out there this year, he's had, 4 starts in the playoffs. He is 3-1 in those 4 starts. His first one, he went 8 scoreless against Milwaukee in the wild card round, which 13 strikeouts, a fantastic outing. He then got hit around a little bit by the Padres. He went, 6 innings, 3 runs in that outing. Then, of course, everybody knows what happened against the Braves. 5 innings, 4 runs. And then here we are, 6 innings and 1 run in the World Series for a nice outing for Clayton Kershaw. And you have to feel good for Clayton Kershaw. I mean, he's one of those guys that if you're close to my age, 31, 32, millennials listening out there will understand that this guy has been fantastic for 15 years now, 14 years. I mean, I think back to my college days, back when the Fightin' Phils were in their prime, 08, 09, 10, 11, and Kershaw was dealing for the Dodgers at this point. I actually, during the pandemic, went back and watched a couple of those playoff games from 2008, and that was actually Kershaw's first year with the club. So, 12 years later, still dealing in the postseason, still has that Hall of Fame breaking ball. It's certainly something to keep an eye on. If he's able to go again in Game 5 and get the victory, he may be an early line for that MVP just due to the length of his career and, what we know now about everything. But from Tampa Bay's side of things, their offense, Randy Arozarena, he was unable to get going. He was 0 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout. He is still stuck on 21 hits. He is 1 behind Derek Jeter for the rookie record and a couple behind Barry Bonds, I believe it is, for the all-time postseason record. He'll be looking for that in Game 2 on Wednesday night. Brandon Lowe continues to struggle through Game 1. It's fascinating what happens in baseball when you go game to game, because recording this one after Game 1, thinking about it, going, man, he's struggling, and then going about recording after Game 2, totally a different conversation. But only 6 hits offensively for Tampa. Kevin Kiermaier really the only guy to get things going. Brousseau had a hit in a pinch hit spot. And then on the mound, Tyler Glasnow. Kevin Cash left him out there to dry a little bit in Game 1. 4 1/3, only 3 hits, but 6 runs. He had 6 walks. Really struggled to find the strike zone all night. Early on, it looked like he was nibbling the corners against this Dodgers lineup. Didn't want to miss over the heart of the plate. But if you nibble around the corners, get into hitters' counts, it's tough to throw quality pitches in those scenarios, which led to a lot of base on balls and, not a lot of hits and 8 strikeouts. So 112 pitches in 4 1/3. Cash left him out there a little bit longer than everybody had anticipated. And, of course, that led to the line of 6 runs in 4 innings that Glasnow's not very proud of. But Yarborough came in for 2/3 of an inning. He was able to get a couple of outs. And then they went to Fleming for 2 2/3. Kind of eat some innings at that point. Once again, it was 6-1. Fleming gives up a couple of runs, but he's able to extend and give them the length they need to save the bullpen heading into Game 2. And, I talked about it in my preview. I thought that the Dodgers would win Game 1. I just had a feeling them coming back from that 3-1 series deficit against the Braves, feeling good about themselves, that would carry over into the series, before they're able to kind of feel each other out and get into a bit of a flow. Because coming in winning 3 straight, now 4 straight after Game 1, then the Rays on the flip side have now lost 4 of 5, but now they're into the new series. They've felt out the Dodgers, and they're going to find their footing, as we found heading into Game 2. But that'll wrap things up here for the first segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik, as always, here on Thursday, October 22nd. I appreciate you guys listening in today. Do me a favor, share this podcast with one of your friends. Rate and review the podcast as well. But right now, we'll pause for a word from one of our sponsors, one of our sister shows. And then when we come back, we'll get into Game 2. We'll talk about it. We'll recap it. Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Thanks again for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It is a beautiful Thursday out here in the greater Philadelphia area. Weather's just about 70 degrees. That's insane. Coming up on Halloween, especially since talking to some of my buddies who I played baseball with back in the day. One of them lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and he was sending me pictures of snow out there on the ground. So you guys listening out there in the Midwest, dealing with accumulation, having to shovel already, my goodness, I couldn't even imagine as I'm recording here. It's late at night, but it's a beautiful night here in greater Philadelphia. But if you guys could do me a favor, please rate and review the podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, click that star all the way on the right-hand part of the screen after you scroll down, and then leave a comment, write a question. I'd love to hear from you guys and get those answered moving forward here over the course of the next couple shows. But thanks again for tuning in. We're going to jump into Game 2 of the World Series. Of course, the Dodgers are ahead 1-0 heading into Wednesday night's action. It is basically a must-win for the Tampa Bay Rays, and they were able to get off to a great start. Brandon Lowe hit an opposite field home run in the top of the first inning, and he had come into Game 2 on a 6-for-59 streak. And my goodness, the guy who was tops in the AL MVP odds at one point when I talked to you guys during the regular season now finds himself in a 6-for-59 slump here in the playoffs. But let's talk about Brandon Lowe in a bit more detail, because we found out after the game that it came out that he got some help and assistance from some old coaches that he trusts. And he did it in a way by sending them video, asking them to kind of look at what they see and get their thoughts. And a slight sidebar story for you guys out there, and this one's really for the kids listening, or middle schoolers, high schoolers, whatever level you're playing ball at. But, I myself, if you guys are new to the program, I played at Lehigh University. I was an All-American, All-Regional first baseman, an All-Conference third baseman. I played left, right, I pitched, I did it all. Played in Texas, played in Florida, played in Hawaii, the Northeast, all over the country. And one trick that I learned throughout this entire thing, because when you are traveling, you're not with family, you're not with consistent coaches. The only time there is consistency is usually at the university, whether it's fall to spring, but then you go to summer and you can kind of work on some things, try to reinvent the swing a little bit. And one thing you need to do out there is whenever you are hot, right? Whenever you are locked in, the ball is huge, you're hitting everything, using all fields, get into a batting cage or have somebody do it when you're live and get a parent, a friend, whoever it is, to take pictures from behind, from in front, and from the side of you so that you're able to get a visualization of your stance from each angle, from the ground up. And get some video now that it's 2020 and we have all these capabilities. This was back in 2010, a decade ago when I was doing this. But I was playing in the TCL, the Texas Collegiate League. I was hitting like 360 at the time and hitting in the middle of the lineup, couple of home runs in the top 5 of all Triple Crown categories, average, homers, RBIs. And I took these photos of where my stance currently was, right? And I didn't use them, didn't look at them for the rest of the summer. Finished the year hitting right at 300, had a good summer, went back to school, got into fall ball, came back in the spring, and honestly didn't feel as comfortable. I started, I think it was like 2 for 9 or 3 for 10 on the year, but it wasn't where I wanted to be. I didn't feel as comfortable as I could in the box. So I had the coaches take pictures of me from the back, front, and center, right? And then I had my parents, who did it the previous summer, email me those pictures. This again was before the iPhones going back and forth. This was like Motorola Razr time, right? So I had them email me the pictures digitally. I was able to pull them up on the screen and look from the side and go, oh my goodness. Okay, my weight balance and my weight transfer in this picture on the left where I'm hitting 360 is right here. And this picture on the right where I'm hitting 210 is right here. And oh my gosh, my right elbow, my back elbow is at a 45-degree angle in this picture. And in this picture, it's at a 75-degree angle. Okay, look at the hands. That then makes the hands closer to my head as opposed to closer to my ear or shoulder or whatever your little, niche or whatever your thing is, right? You're able to look at that and determine, okay, I've actually gotten off of my launch point and I'm able to recenter and get back to that groove that I was in. And the reason I took time to talk to you guys about that, and I think every one of you should do it out there if you're still playing, is because, like I said, Brandon Lowe essentially sent video of Game 1, probably the rest of the playoffs, to a few coaches who he's worked with for years and years, and both of them came back with very similar feedback. I believe they were talking about the angle of his core in relation to his load and then his launch angle and bat path through the zone. They both told him, you got to do this, got to bend over a little bit further. And thus he does it. First at bat, Game 2, pops one out opposite field. And of course, then in your head, you're going, oh my God, that's the best I've felt in weeks. I mean, the entire playoffs, he's got 1 home run, 6 hits. Now he's 1 for 1 with a home run in the first inning. Come back, have a quality at bat in the third. Okay, things don't go your way, but then come back in the 5th. Boom, pop another one out to opposite field. This one barely gets out of the ballpark, but it's still a home run. And now you've made history because you're the first guy in the history of Major League Baseball to hit 2 opposite field home runs in the same World Series game. I mean, who would have thought Brandon Lowe, 1 home run all postseason, is going to pop 2 of them out, both opposite field in Game 2. And honestly, that kind of surprised me. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, okay, Chase Utley in 08, who else hit a couple of home runs in a game? And yeah, absolutely, at least one of them's to the pull side because it's usually indoor breaking ball or front side fastball, and they're able to pull it and get it out of the ballpark. But Lowe stayed through a couple of baseballs in what was fantastic hitting, and if he finds himself, it really gives depth to this Rays lineup because outside of Arozarena in the ALCS as a team, they hit under 200. So if they can get Lowe going, and then the other gentleman who helped him out here was Wendell. He had a double to right that scored a couple of runs, a big 2-out hit for the Tampa Bay Rays to score a couple of runs, make it 3-0. So if those guys can get going, Lowe homered 1-0, Wendell double, Lowe homer 5-0. And you're heading to the bottom of the 5th, and you're feeling good about where you are if you're the Tampa Bay Rays at this point. But the Dodgers, as they do, of course, they made things interesting in the bottom of the 5th inning when they were finally able to get to Blake Snell. And this was really a fascinating turn for Blake Snell because he went from a no-hitter to being pulled out of the game in a matter of, I think, 4 batters, gave up a couple of hits, couple of doubles, and boom, he was out of the ball game. So Blake Snell, who this entire year really hasn't gone beyond the fifth inning, failed to get there once again. So the Rays starters 4 and change in game 1, and then Snell able to give him 4 2/3 here in game 2 before ultimately giving way to Nick Anderson. And Anderson was able to be that stopper that they needed at this point. So he was able to get out of a jam, keep the score 5-3, and then ultimately the Rays added another run there to make it 6-3 before L.A. once again, let's see, the long ball. That's right. That's what it was. Can't even remember. A lot's been going on. But Smith homered in the bottom of the 6th, and then Seager homered in the bottom of the 8th to make it 6-4 before ultimately the Rays bullpen close things out. Let's see. Anderson, an inning and a third, 1 run. Fairbanks, an inning and 2/3 for 1 run. And then Loop and Castillo were able to close things out scoreless for the pitching side of things. And not having Castillo throw a lot of pitches, only 3 pitches in game 2, that bodes well moving forward for what they're looking to do the rest of the series. And then L.A. on the pitching side of things, they really kept me surprised. I'm going to be honest with you. And there's potential that these kids are overworked here. I mean, Gonsolin, he started the game. I thought ultimately they would go with Walker Buehler, but maybe due to the Game 1 win, they didn't use him in Game 2. We'll get to that here in a later segment. But Gonsolin only went an inning and a third, 29 pitches, giving up a run, a hit and a home run to Lowe. Then they went to Floro for an inning and a third. He was scoreless. Gonzalez gave up a run in an inning. And then Dustin May, ultimately the guy who was tagged for most of the runs, as he went an inning and a third, gave up 4 hits and 3 runs. He gave up the double, and then one of the runs on the Lowe homer, Joe Kelly being tagged with the other run, actually giving up the home run was May. So May gave up the home run, and Gonsolin both gave up the home run to Lowe, but Joe Kelly being charged with a run as well, followed by Wood and McGee, who closed out the game without giving up any trouble. But offensively for the Dodgers, a bit of a tough day, only 5 hits on the entire day. Corey Seager had 2 hits after being hitless in Game 1. Will Smith had a hit, and then Taylor had a hit. So offensively for the Dodgers, they relied on the long ball, but ultimately you're not going to be able to do that over the course of 7 games. I mean, Taylor, Smith, and Seager all homered, but no runs generated off of anything other than a home run, and it's the Wendell double that scores a couple that ends up being the difference. So through 2 games offensively, Betts is hitting 286, Seager 333, Justin Turner's hitting 250, Max Muncy 286, Will Smith 222. Bellinger continues to struggle even though he does have the home run. He's hitting 143. Kike Hernandez 333. And then Taylor, like we mentioned, at 429 as he was 1 for 4 in Game 2 once again. And then Tampa Bay offensively through a couple of games, and it's tough to keep up with this team, as I saw a stat that was unbelievable. In the regular season, out of the 60 games, Kevin Cash had 59 different lineups. 59 different starting lineups. I don't know if I could play for a guy like that. I mean, I needed to know coming to the yard if I was going to be in the lineup and ultimately where I was going to be hitting. And the story I tell around that gets back to a weekend in George Washington. It was early in my sophomore year. I was hitting cleanup for the first time. I didn't hit my freshman year, and I jumped right to the cleanup spot my sophomore year. And I went to George Washington. I hit my first at-bat. I hit a fastball off the wall for a double, and then I didn't see another fastball for the entire weekend. And I didn't get another hit until my last at-bat of the weekend. So I was 2 for 11 or 2 for 12. A lot of strikeouts on breaking balls, and then the one coach pulled me away and finally said, "Hey, Mahalik, if you don't realize you're going to be hitting 4th for this team for the rest of the year by now, I don't know when you're going to realize." Because up until that point, I was still checking every day. Am I in the lineup? Am I in the lineup? Am I in the lineup? And now I'm 2 for 12. Oh, crap, is he going to pull me out? I better pick it up. And it was just kind of that reassurance from the coaching staff that was like, hey, man, whether you're 2 for 12 or 2 for 20, you're one of our best bats, and we're going to run you out there, and you're going to figure it out. So that's what I was able to do. But somehow these Tampa Bay Rays, 59 different lineups in 60 games, as well as here in the playoffs, a lot of different moves. We had a pinch runner, a pinch hitter, another pinch hitter. So moves continue to be made if you're Cash at the top of the list, and they continue to press the right buttons here. But through 2 games, it's been, a high-scoring battle thus far. I think it is 12-9 in runs scored, 21 total runs. People who thought it would be a pitcher's duel, they really haven't been in for it thus far, but it is now a best of 5, like I mentioned at the top of the show, and ultimately I think Game 3 is going to be the true determining factor on whether this will be a quick series or a long series, because you guys know my predictions if you listened. It's either Dodgers in 5 or Rays in 7, and I don't know, I'm sticking to that. I think we're lining up good for those 2 scenarios to play out here. But that'll do it for wrapping up the first couple of games. I don't want to take all episode talking about it. It's Thursday afternoon if you guys are listening to this upon release. If you're catching up Friday before Game 3, 4, and 5's action over the weekend, you still got enough time, because that's what our third segment's going to be. We're going to step aside here for just a moment, and then I'm going to come back and preview the rest of the series. There's some surprises when it comes to starting pitching. A lot of undecided going on from the Tampa Bay side of things. But in Game 3, Walker Buehler will be opposed by Charlie Morton as of now for Friday. Of course, everything's subject to change with Major League Baseball and everything going on, but Game 3 is going to be a huge swing game, in my opinion. So we'll step aside here now. We'll pause for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows, but when we come back on the GSMC Baseball Podcast, you guys are going to know ultimately who I'm picking, how many games, and what else we're looking for. So stick around, everybody. I appreciate you guys listening. Once again, leave a rating and review. It helps us a long, long way, and we really appreciate it. But stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, and thanks again for listening to the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It's a beautiful Thursday. Thanks again for listening, everybody. Have you guys checked out the other podcasts within the network? I bring it up every episode, but you guys definitely should. All the sports going on. Basketball just finished. Football's going on. Big Ten football is back this Saturday. I'm myself a Michigan Wolverines fan. They take on the Minnesota Golden Gophers up there in Minnesota, Minneapolis. We touched on it. A lot of snow up in the area. I wonder how Saturday night's weather is going to be, whether it's going to affect the football game, what's happening there. If you're into the NFL, hey, Thursday night, tonight, we got the Birds. I'm in Philly. Birds versus Giants. Ultimately, Carson Wentz, 4-0 straight up, 4-0 against the spread on Thursday Night Football. The New York Football Giants 0-4 against the spread on their last 4 on Thursday Night Football. So, for those of you betting out there from states where you can legally do so, Bet Rivers Casino, I myself putting money on the Birds. I'll take the money line tonight. Thank you very much. but check out the football podcast if you're into that. So that's where this started. Sorry, I get off on tangents, but if you're like me, like I said, you got passions in other sports, you're going to want to check out those podcasts, as well as if you're into other stuff besides sports. I don't know, cars, politics. We had a presidential debate coming up here Thursday night. Check out the politics podcast. They're going to break it all down, news, relationships, all the good stuff. So for those of you who haven't just checked out the network, look at all the different content, please do us a favor here. Pause this show, or don't pause it, because you can search while you're listening. Go to the icon down there, the search icon. Type in GSMC and check out all the different podcasts for you. But now we're going to look at the preview for the rest of the series here. Of course, Thursday being an off day. The next 3 games, Tampa Bay will be the home team, quote unquote, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Then we'll have an off day Monday, where I'll be talking to you guys again. We'll either have a winner in 5, Dodgers or Rays, or we'll be talking about game 6 or 7, and then it'll be a week from today, where we're talking about ultimately who was the 2020 champion and kind of wrapping everything up. But, where do we stand here today? Travel day, off day. What are my predictions moving forward? Like I talked about, a high-scoring series through a couple of games. This was a bit of a surprise because the Dodgers allowed the second fewest runs per game during the 2020 season, and Tampa Bay actually ranked 4th in that same category. So 2 teams in the top 5 of allowing the least amount of runs per game have given up 21 runs and 47 base runners in 2 games. There's also been 8 home runs that have done damage throughout the first 2 games. So it'll be interesting to see here. Brandon Lowe can keep his Game 2 breakout going into Games 3, 4, and 5. That will, of course, be a huge difference down the stretch, because Randy Arozarena really hasn't gotten things going through 2 games. So we'll talk about that here in just a second. But Joey Wendell, if he can get a couple of other big hits, he's looked lost at the plate thus far, but he was able to get a big hit with runners in scoring position there in Game 3 to extend the lead for the Rays. But let's talk more about Arozarena. Let's get into him. He had 3 home runs in the ALDS, 4 home runs in the ALCS, and of course, LA basically looked at their roster and their lineup and said, Arozarena won them the ALCS. We're not going to allow him to do the same in the World Series. And in 2 games, he's 1 for 6. He went 1 for 3 in Game 2, where ultimately that brought him to 22 hits in the postseason. It ties him with Derek Jeter for most hits as a rookie in the playoffs. And then, total bases. He's getting up there as well. See if I can find that stat here in my notes. But right now in my notes, I have the pitches and pitch location to talk about with you guys in Arozarena. Now, I have a graphic in front of me. You can't see it here on the podcast, but basically everything is down and out of the zone. You have a couple of high fastballs, but everything is down. He's seen 29 pitches so far in the World Series and only 7 fastballs. So 22 off-speed pitches, whether it's slider, splitter, changeup, curveball. This gets back to my story at GW. And I know what you're going through, Randy. I mean, you hit a couple of fastballs out, and you tend not to see them. But he has walked a number of times thus far as well here in the World Series, which basically means that the Dodgers are willing to just throw him breaking balls, try to get him to chase, and if he doesn't, put him on first base. Because like I said, the rest of that lineup hitting under 200 hasn't really shown up and down that if this series continues on, that they're going to be able to produce and hit with the Dodgers. Again, in Game 2, that hasn't happened for Tampa in quite some time. I mean, Brandon Lowe and Joey Wendell providing all 5-6 RBIs was the difference. And, they lost those games against Houston when Arozarena wasn't able to kind of be the difference and give them ultimately what they're looking for. So look for LA to continue to pitch around Arozarena. Look for the Rays to continue to need contributions from other guys up and down the lineup, whether it's G-Man Choi or, Wendell again. Who else for Tampa could step up? But it'll be interesting to see if that offense can continue to stick with LA, because from the bullpen side of things, I think Tampa continues to have the advantage. I mean, Nick Anderson, he's still in the circle of trust, so to speak. They used him in the 5th inning to get out of a jam, even though he had been struggling thus far in the postseason. It was fascinating to see them still go to him in a big situation to get a couple of huge outs, but he was able to come through for those guys. And, ultimately they'll continue to use him in high-leverage situations, whether it's 5th inning, 6th inning, 9th inning. Kevin Cash continues to run out his guys, and continue to allow them to work through slumps. I mean, he talked about Lowe, how sometimes you got to keep grinding and working through. And now when he's talking about Anderson, he's talking about how he's been as good of a reliever in baseball since the day they got him in a trade. So I don't look for his role to change here over the next 5 games. It'll just be a matter of, once again, if he's able to execute or if the Dodgers are able to take advantage, that'll be another key matchup moving forward. And the Dodgers pitchers, starting pitching is certainly something to discuss here, because if you look at, probable pitchers moving forward, for Friday night's matchup, we got Walker Buehler versus Charlie Morton. For Saturday's matchup, you got Julio Urias versus Undecided, and then Clayton Kershaw versus Undecided in Game 5. So the Dodgers' rotation is pretty much set. I mean, if we're going through Games 5 there, then you're going to have another off day. Could you potentially go to Buehler in Game 6? I think ultimately you'd let him go to Game 7, and you'd probably go with the combination of the kids, of May and Gosselin, once again in Game 6. Even though, like I told you guys earlier, they're running on fumes just a little bit here. Let's look at some of their usage, if I could pull it up here real quick for the past couple of days. Gosselin and May, they threw a combined 102 innings in the regular season with a 2.45 ERA during that time span. And then here in the playoffs, in Game 2 alone, they were tied for 4 runs in 2 2/3 innings and 14 runs total in 16 playoff innings. So not a good postseason for the kids as they start to get up there in innings pitched this year. So we'll see what Dave Roberts wants to do, but going to the combination of Gonsolin and May in Game 6 could potentially pose some problems since they really haven't performed well in the month here of October. So the depth could be an issue for Dodgers pitching. But let's see. Charlie Morton and Walker Buehler going in Game 3. And Game 3 for me is truly going to be the swing game in the series. Like I said, and I teased it last segment, I thought it could be Dodgers in 5, but the longer the series goes, the more and more it favors the Rays. I think it's Dodgers in 5, Dodgers in 6, but if it somehow gets to 7, I like Tampa Bay in that scenario. And really, the only reason why I like Tampa Bay so much in that particular scenario is the guy they have on the mound in Game 3. And it's big game Charlie Morton. And his stats in the postseason continue to just be an anomaly. I mean, honestly, the guy's been good during the regular season. He's got a career 4.08 ERA in the regular season. Then you go to his playoff stats and you go to his career, and it goes all the way down to 2.84. You look at a World Series appearance, and he's got 2 games, 10 innings, and 2 runs. So a 1.74 ERA in 10 innings. If we break it down round by round here, I was able to get this up. Okay. He 5 innings, no runs in his only wild card appearance. Then we have the ALDS, where he's 2-0 in 14 innings. He did throw in an NLDS years back, 5 2/3, only giving up 2 runs. Then in 3 ALCS, he is 3-1 with a 4.15 ERA, so he was hit around a little in the ALCS, but World Series, 10 innings, 2 runs. And I just trust this guy in a big Game 7. I really do. And, looking back at the history, the Pittsburgh Pirates he threw in the playoffs in 2013, but really since 2017, I mean, this guy, once again, World Series, 10 innings, 2 runs. This will be his second appearance in the World Series in Game 3, but ALCS, 10 2/3, 0 runs. ALDS, 5 innings, 2 runs. So the guy, let's see, and those are unearned. Wow. So the guy's given up 1 earned run in 15 2/3 postseason innings this year, which obviously is absolutely insane. I don't have the total ERA in front of me the way it's broken down here on Baseball Reference, but Charlie Morton has been as good as any pitcher in this postseason. And he's going up against Walker Buehler, who has been dealing with blisters all year. And, looking at his past couple of starts, especially here, and let's look at the postseason. Baseball Reference, standard pitching. I want playoff pitching, Baseball Reference, not standard pitching. What's going on? There it is. Okay, postseason against Atlanta. He went, 1 run in 11 innings. He had 2 starts, and he was fantastic in the NLCS. So both of these guys going at it is going to be just an unbelievable shift in momentum in this series. Because if the Dodgers are able to pull this game out, think about it, right? 3 in a row, 4 in a row, lose 1, it would still be 5 out of 6 for the Dodgers, giving them a 2-1 lead. And at that point, it would also be losing, 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, 4 out of 6. You would have lost 5 out of 7 if you're the Tampa Bay Rays and you lose game 2. Or on the flip side of things, you're now Tampa Bay, and after losing 3 of 4, you were able to win 2 straight. And the Dodgers are now lost 2 straight after winning 4 in a row. And are they a streaky team? Are they getting hot? Where are they at? So ultimately, my predictions here coming up in Game 3. I think it favors Charlie Morton. I think his stuff against that Dodgers offense will play just a little bit better than Buehler's stuff against the Rays offense. And then I think the bullpen coming after Morton will be exceptional from Tampa, as always. I think Tampa steals Game 3 in the first low-scoring affair of the World Series. I don't know, maybe call it 5-2, 4-2, something along those lines, maybe a late bullpen run or 2. Then you get to Game 4, where the Dodgers bounce back. Julio Urias, he's able to get the victory against the bullpen game from Tampa Bay. I think LA's offense lights up Tampa Bay's bullpen in that game. In Game 4, they win that game by a score kind of similar to Game 1 of 8-3, 9-4, something along those lines, which brings you back to the series tied at 2. And Game 5 at that point would be Clayton Kershaw against Tyler Glasnow once again. And I think we'd see a very similar movie that we saw the other night, where Kershaw would do very well. The offense would jump on that Glasnow fastball if he's not able to locate it within the zone, and take a 3-2 lead if you're the Dodgers heading into Game 6 and 7. But that's where, again, I get into this Game 2 and 3 kind of category, right? I think Blake Snell against Gosselin and May in Game 6 would be advantage Tampa, which gets you to the ultimate best 2 words in sports, and that's Game 7. And then you're giving me Buehler and Morton, and I just got to take big game Morton in 7. But if the Dodgers are able to win tonight, Urias against that bullpen, I think they win tomorrow. I think they're up 3-1, and Clayton Kershaw has a chance to win a World Series, be a World Series MVP with 2 victories, have fantastic stats in the postseason, and then the Dodgers ultimately get it done in 5. So that's where I think tonight's the night, or tomorrow, not Thursday night, excuse me. I keep thinking there's no off days anymore because they have me programmed, but now we're in a travel day here. So Friday night is the night. Tampa wins. I think this series is long and a good one. If LA wins, I think it's over sooner rather than later. But that'll do it. Let me know what you guys think. Like I said, leave a comment. Check us out on social media. Let me know what you guys think now that it is a best of 5 to crown a World Series champion here in 2020. But that'll wrap it up for the 3rd segment. That'll do it here. We're going to pause, step aside for a word from one of our sponsors and one of our sister shows here within the network. But when we come back, I'm going to let you guys know all the Gold Glove nominees for the 2020 season, and we're going to pick some winners, so maybe you can win some money out there gambling. But I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. Stick around, everybody. We'll be right back.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores!
listen now.
Welcome back to the fourth and final segment of the GSMC Baseball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kevin Mahalik. It's Thursday, October 22nd. Hopefully everybody's getting ready for Halloween out there. I don't know what the CDC recommendations are on trick or treat. I think it's different for every state, city, county, jurisdiction, township, whatever the heck you're in out there. Check your local listings to see what's going on for Halloween. But my 2.5-year-old daughter here at home, she's loving it, loving her witch costume. She calls it spooky or spooktober because we're not totally into like the scary part yet, so it's more spooky than it is scary because she doesn't like being scared, so to speak, but, understands the concept more of spooky, peekaboo, that type of stuff. So it's a lot of fun around here, though, this time of year. Hopefully you guys are getting out there enjoying the fall weather. If you haven't done so yet, check us out on social media. Leave us a rating and review. Share us with your friends. You guys know the drill. I'm not preaching anything new out there to you. But here in the fourth and final segment, I want to transition gears just a little bit, as today the nominees for the Gold Glove Award were released. And it is a top three where ultimately the winners will be determined on November 3rd. So we do have a few weeks yet until the winners are released here. But let's run through it and kind of look at last year's winners to see if we're going to have a repeat winner at any position. But in the American League, the 2019 winner was Mike Leake, pitcher for Seattle. That's where we'll start off as the pitchers. Here in 2020, the three nominees are Zach Plesac of the Indians, Kenta Maeda of the Twins, and Griffin Canning of the Angels. So we'll have a new winner at the pitcher's position. I'm going to go with Kenta Maeda. Not really sure once again. Told you we'd be taking a handful of guesses here, but we're having fun in the fourth segment. And for those of you into Pod Squad, you guys are still hanging out. I appreciate it. Let's go Kenta Maeda, AL pitcher, Gold Glove. Roberto Perez won it behind the dish last year. He is up for the award once again for the Cleveland Indians. He is joined by Yasmani Grandal and James McCann, both of the Chicago White Sox. I don't know if I've ever seen two nominees from one team at one position before, but the duo of Grandal and McCann, both exceptional with the glove and both nominated, which to me makes it, it's going to go back to Roberto Perez, because how can they give it to one guy over the other if they're both nominated? I think that's a tricky situation that Major League Baseball has put itself in, and thus far, Perez is going to be winning that one. Next, we'll go to first base. Matt Olson won the award last year. He is up once again for the award. He is joined by Yuri Gurriel and Evan White of the Mariners. Personally, I think Matt Olson will win that award once again. Evan White is solid. Yuri Gurriel had some struggles defensively, in my opinion, but I think Matt Olson wins the award for a second straight year. Yomar Sanchez of the Chicago White Sox was your 2019 winner at second base. This year, we will have a new winner with Cesar Hernandez being nominated for the Cleveland Indians, which is surprising to me because him on the Fightin' Phils the last handful of years, he never played anywhere close to Gold Glove second base. If anything, he was a below-average defender. So if he truly did play great defense there for the Indians, shout out to Cesar for improving in the offseason. That's great work by him. We have Danny Mendick for the White Sox as a potential winner, and then Jonathan Shoop for the Detroit Tigers. And I think Shoop's going to win it for the Tigers. I don't really know who Mendick is for the White Sox, and then Hernandez, like I said, historically not great. So I got to go with Shoop of the Tigers. Then we're going to go over to third base, where it was Matt Chapman of the Oakland Athletics a year ago. He is not up for the award this year. It is Isaiah Kinner-Falefa for the Rangers, Yoan Moncada for the White Sox, and Gio Urshela for the Yankees. And I'm going Gio Urshela for the Yankees to win the third base award, but that's a coin flip. Who the heck knows? At shortstop last year was Francisco Lindor, but this year it's going to be J.P. Crawford of the Mariners, or Carlos Correa of the Astros, or Nico Goodrum of the Detroit Tigers. And once again, JP, I was never that impressed with him in a Phillies uniform, even in AAA. Watching him, yeah, he was always smooth defensively. He could never hit, but I didn't think he was Gold Glove caliber. Oh, man. That means I'm going to give it to Correa of the Astros. His arm strength and some of the plays that he made in the playoffs and the ability he showed defensively, I think will be the difference maker for him, and he'll win the award. In the outfield from left to right, a year ago, we had Alex Gordon of Kansas City, Kevin Kiermaier of Tampa Bay, and Mookie Betts of Boston win the awards in the American League. This year, we have new nominees all the way across the board. Byron Buxton, Ramon Laureano, and Luis Robert are your center field nominees. Oh, man, Luis Robert being a rookie, I know he made a ton of catches. I think it's difficult for somebody as a rookie to come in right away and win an award so prestigious as a Gold Glove. So I'm going to give it to Byron Buxton. Only raindrops fall out in center field, according to Buxton, and I think it goes his way. And then in left field, we have Alex Gordon of the Royals, who was last year's winner, Luis Gurriel Jr. for the Blue Jays, and Kyle Tucker for the Astros. And yeah, Kyle Tucker was good in Houston, but ultimately I think Alex Gordon will be your repeat champion for the Gold Glove out there in left field. And then in right field, your three nominees, Clint Frazier of the Yankees, Joey Gallo of the Rangers, and Anthony Santander of the Orioles. And Joey Gallo, I didn't think he was known for his defense, so seeing him on this list is a surprise in his own right. And then Clint Frazier, he's good defensively, but not an everyday guy out there, so tough to give it to him. I think Santander of the Orioles may walk away with this one and find that Gold Glove. So my predictions, Kenta Maeda, pitcher, Roberto Perez, catcher, Matt Olson, first base, Jonathan Shoup, second, Gio Urshela, third base, Carlos Correa, shortstop, Alex Gordon, left field, Byron Buxton, center field, and Anthony Santander out in right field for the Orioles, winning the awards. Now let's transfer over to the National League side of things. If my attachment here will let me, there we go. We'll just turn the screen. On the pitching side of things, Zach Greinke won the Gold Glove for the pitching side in the National League. Here, this year, 2020, your three nominees are Max Fried of the Braves, Kyle Hendricks of the Cubs, and Alex Mills of the Cubs. So a couple of Cubbies up for Gold Glove awards here in 2020. That means, Chicago's out there doing their pitchers' fielding practice, just getting better and better day in and day out. But I think Max Fried wins the award after watching him field bunts all year, being in the NL East, following along for a long time, trying to get the Fightin' Phils to possibly get back in the race. Max Fried was very impressive to watch defensively here in 2020. 2019, JT Realmuto won the award for the Phillies behind the dish, and he's not even a nominee for 2020, which ultimately I find surprising because the communication, of course, going into this offseason, he'll be a free agent. He's the top free agent available. He's the top catcher in baseball. He's a Gold Glove winning catcher. He's an offensive providing catcher. Well, now he's not even a Gold Glove nominee as a catcher. So does this potentially hurt a few dollars in his pockets during the offseason here because he's not nominated second year in a row? I think it might, actually, because Tucker Barnhart of the Reds, Wilson Contreras of the Cubs, and then Jacob Stallings of the Pirates are your three nominees. And honestly, I don't know much about any of these guys. I'm not going to go Contreras. So I think it could be Barnhart of the Reds just due to their pitching staff and Trevor Bauer being the Cy Young. And ultimately, that means you're calling a fantastic game back there with the success of the staffs. And I think Barnhart from Cincinnati ultimately wins that award. The 2019 winner at first base, Anthony Rizzo of the Chicago Cubs. Anthony will be nominated again this year alongside Paul Goldschmidt and Brandon Belt. I think this one comes down to Brandon Belt and Anthony Rizzo for the win. And I'll go Rizzo back to back. I think they could give Anthony another W here when it comes to the award. So let's look at second base now. in the National League here. I got to scroll to this other page. This was Kolten Wong of the St. Louis Cardinals in 2020. Or in 2019. In 2020, Kolten Wong is nominated once again, alongside of Nico Hoyner for the Cubbies, and then Adam Frazier of the Pirates. And Kolten Wong, he was fantastic again defensively. Does he win his second in a row like Rizzo at first base? I mean, that's the chalk play here, so let's do it. Let's say he wins another one. Third base was Nolan Arenado in 2019. If we transition here to 2020, Nolan Arenado nominated once again, as well as Manny Machado and Brian Anderson. And this one comes down to Machado versus Arenado, in my opinion. Brian Anderson, fantastic defensively, but I don't think he's on the level of Arenado and Machado and what they were able to put together. So let's give this one to Arenado. His reputation is a bit more positive on the defensive side of things compared to Machado, and ultimately I think that could be a factor within the voters. The shortstop position, Nick Ahmed for Arizona, was the winner last year. He is not nominated here in 2020. Javier Baez, Miguel Rojas, and Dansby Swanson are your three nominees. And man, Baez, he's got all the athletic talent. He's got all the arm strength in the world, can make every play. But for some reason, my gut and instinct is telling me that Dansby Swanson is going to have the inside track to win the Gold Glove this year, just based on everything he did for the Braves and their pitching staff, their young pitching staff, and throwing to contact and having him get a lot of outs. But in the outfield, 2019 left to right, David Peralta, as Arizona had 3 Gold Glove winners last year, Ahmed, Peralta, and Greinke. Peralta in left, Lorenzo Cain in center field for Milwaukee, and then Cody Bellinger in right field is the nominee. Now here in 2020, we have Shogo Akuyama of the Reds as a nominee out in left field. He is joined by Tyler O'Neill of the Cardinals and David Peralta of Arizona, who was your winner last year. Peralta again, you know what? Let's mix it up this time. I'm going to go Shogo Akuyama of the Cincinnati Reds as your winner out in left field. No justification, no stats, no analysis. That one's going straight Shogo in regards to left field. Center field, we got Acuna Jr. Bellinger has moved from right to center, but he is still a Gold Glove nominee out in center. And then Trent Grisham of the Padres. So I don't know if they're going to give this one to Acuna yet out there. It could be Bellinger's once again in center. And then in right field, we have Jason Hayward, Charlie Blackmon, and Mookie Betts. Mookie Betts won the award on the American League side of things. He's been fantastic defensively in this World Series. He's taken away home runs. Cody Bellinger's made plays by the wall. Mookie Betts made a catch running in. He was able to double up Ozuna in the NLCS. So defense has really been important. And that's why I think Betts and Bellinger win these awards in the National League. So a bit more turnover in the American League from year-to-year winners. But in the National League, my predictions are Max Fried at pitcher. Let's see here. Tucker Barnhart behind the dish. Anthony Rizzo at first. Kolten Wong at second. Nolan Arenado at third. Shortstop is Dansby Swanson. Left field, Shogo Akuyama. Center field, Cody Bellinger. And right field, Mookie Betts. So what do you guys think out there? Once again, the winners will be released on November 3rd, so we got a couple of weeks, but let me know your thoughts. Let me know who you guys think's going to win out there. I'd love to hear from you. Love to get your opinion on things, but that'll do it for today's episode. It was a good one. I appreciate you guys listening in, wrapping up games 1 and 2, and then talking about the importance here of game 3, and honestly, I think the winner of game 3 goes on to win the World Series. I know there's a ton of statistics about the importance of Game 3 tied at 1-1 and the importance of Game 5 tied at 2-2 and Game 1, and every odd number is, of course, of extreme importance because you're either able to push further or they, work back. But if Tampa and Charlie Morton are able to get past Walker Buehler, I think it's able to show Tampa going the distance for the rest of this series. But if Walker wins in Game 4 or in Game 3, then they get against that Tampa bullpen in Game 4. Kershaw back in Game 5. Things line up that this could end sooner than later. But once again, that'll do it. I got to ask you guys one last time. Share this podcast with your friend. Just one a week. Text your buddy. I know you're talking to somebody. It's Thursday night. Maybe you're getting drinks out there. Maybe you're in Florida where everything's open. It's the weekend. We got football coming up, but you're following the World Series. If you're watching the World Series with your buddy, say, hey, man, I listen to this podcast, GSMC podcast. It's fantastic. Here's the link. Rate and review. Give it 5 stars. Kevin's the best. He's on every Monday and Wednesday, but they release episodes every day so you can stay up to date with everything going on out there. But that'll do it for me. It is Thursday, October 22nd. It's a beautiful day where I'm at. Hopefully it's a beautiful day where you are. Even if the weather stinks, I know you're keeping it beautiful. I will talk to you guys again after the weekend on Monday. Stay safe, stay sane, and enjoy the baseball, everybody.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Baseball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.